mean, it's literally a filing. It's like a misfiling. And yet it's something that was never before tried as a felony. Like many of the other cases, like one of the cases in New York where they changed New York state law to be able to, for 1 year, they changed the law for 1 year to be able to go back and change a statute of limitations so that you could go after my father. And then after that year, after that is filed and they go after my father, that was the Gene Carroll case.
What?
It reverts back to the normal statute of limitations because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to do it.
Wait. What? They changed the law for 1 year so that they could go back and not have the statute of limitation apply, basically run the case of the E. Jean Carroll against Donald Trump. And then they went back and changed the law again.
Bro,
oh my God.
It's crazy, man. With that power, they can do whatever the hell they want.
That is insane. I did not know that, man. That is insanity beyond belief. Anybody that thinks that this system is not rigged, that the establishment isn't basically pushing their agenda is sleeping. They're sleeping. There's zombies. They're walking zombies.
Bro, I mean, bro, they might not be zombies or sleeping. They're just so tied up in all the nonsense around them just to be able to survive. Just to be able to survive and just live day by day, paycheck to paycheck, and worry about what's going to come next with all these uncertainties going around us. They don't have time for that.
But goddamn, man, if that's the case, subscribe to the goddamn podcast. Subscribe to the damn podcast. What I'm saying? Let us bring you the truth.
Outlets like this, through internet and technology, we have to appreciate. We do, because this, instead of listening to a long spiel about what's right, what's wrong, and listening to both sides, or this is a platform where you can hear all of it in a short amount of time.
You can
and
hear
then
the
do
truth,
your own
man.
research. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
exactly. And do your own due diligence. Do your own research. But you know what I'm saying? If you don't want to, that's okay, because you know what? We basically provide you the proof. Go back, check out any one of our videos from the past. Every single thing that is mentioned there has proof attached to it. Checks and balances.
No, absolutely, man. And what I feel like, it does, and it did for me, well, I'm able to shed light on a very specific topic and understand where the problem actually is, and educate myself and improve my day-to-day, right?
Yeah.
So that's the most important thing, because you got to look out for your family, the future. And like you said earlier, man, if they can do it to somebody like Donald Trump, nobody's safe. Nobody's safe. Because if for whatever reason they want to hold the spotlight on a single individual, regular Joe like you and me, bro, we don't stand a chance. We do not stand a chance.
None whatsoever.
And chances are, we're so small. And it's never gonna see the light of day, the news, whatever. And the way we live our lives right now, it's gonna be like, oh, okay, on to the next.
Yeah.
It's not gonna matter to anybody. So I stand for what Donald Trump is doing. I really hope he comes through, man. I really do. I want to be praying for him for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. All right.
This was very similar. This was a case that was, at best, misdemeanor type stuff. Remember, Hillary Clinton started with a similar thing. She got fined $8,000, I believe it was, for starting what was the Russia hoax with the Steele dossier leaks and all of this, right? That was an $8,000 fine. They want to put my father in jail for, upwards of 100 years, depending on how you look at it. And that's never been done before in these things, because basically someone in an accounting department put legal expenses for, paying a lawyer. It's unheard of. But
by the way, do you know who their star witness was? Their star witness was Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen.
Okay? Oh, that's right.
The guy that is notorious for lying proven that he was a liar. As a matter of fact, not only proven, admitted to lying and stealing from Donald Trump.
Wow.
And admitted to lying to his family, to Trump, admitted to, or I guess the recordings came out, recording his client, a lawyer recording his client, obviously without his knowledge, and then basically stealing funds from him. And this is the guy that you use as your witness, your star witness, and you convict Donald Trump. That's crazy, man. That is just absolute insanity.
You have experts when they say, well, it's a federal election crime. They wouldn't let the person who wrote the rules, wrote them, is the foremost expert in all of that, actually testify for us. The jury didn't have to be unanimous on the things that they charged. They just all had to sort of come to a general, if 4 guys agreed on this and 4 people agreed on that, and 4, that's unanimous.
Wow.
The bastardization of all of this thing. And just having been in the courtroom, candidly, was watching, when the prosecution, objected to something that we said, it was always, sustained. They let them, we couldn't ask anything. When it was us asking the questions, the uncomfortable questions of their witnesses, all of a sudden, we were overruled every time. Just the list goes on.
So you've made the case, and others who followed it carefully have made the case that this was a direct hit from the Biden administration. And 100%. They point to a man called Matthew Colangelo.
Yeah.
Can you tell us who he is?
Yeah, Matthew Colangelo was the number 3 guy in Joe Biden's Justice Department. So from Washington, D.C. The other big part of this case, as it relates to that, was that they're trying to say it's a federal election commission case. Well, name another case that's ever been tried that's a federal crime tried in a state court.
So Matthew Colangelo is number 3 at DOJ. So that's about as high as a prosecutor can ascend. Right?
Correct. And he was moved to New York. Don't forget, Alvin Bragg, the district attorney that actually tried this case, turned it down years ago. They could have done this 7, 8 years ago, whenever it happened, but they didn't. The Federal Election Commission, the FEC, that would have been one of the things that's around it. They could have tried. The IRS could have done these things because if it was a tax thing. Mm-hmm. All of them chose to pass, including, again, Alvin Bragg, the guy who's trying it and just tried it right now, passed on this a couple years ago. Biden's number 3 at his DOJ comes up, and all of a sudden now they're filing the charges.
Can I ask
conveniently
you,
right before an election.
A dumb question. So the number 3 guy at DOJ who's ascended this ladder,
yes.
Okay, what is he doing in New York? I mean, that's a massive step
what is he
down.
Doing? He's prosecuting his political enemies, Tucker.
Okay, but that's it. But nobody.
There's literally no other explanation for it. When you look at the bastardization of this, you have a judge who's a Biden donor. His daughter is one of the number 1 Democrat
when you say he's
fundraisers.
He's literally a Biden donor.
He's a Biden donor. Literally has written checks himself. His daughter is one of the most prolific fundraisers for the radical Democrats, wow. Adam Schiff and she's made millions off of that. This judge allowed his daughter's clients, Democrat mega donors, to sit in the courtroom. It's like having front row seats, like you own the New York Rangers, right? It's think of how insane that is, right?
But can I ask a dumb question? First of all, why would the number 3 guy at DOJ wind up in a case, in a state case? That seems like he must have been sent.
Of course.
1. 2, if the judge was literally a Biden donor and donating to, among other things, like the Stop Trump effort, which I think was one of them, how could he remain the judge? How could he?
Because it's New York. What do you appeal it to? You appeal it to another panel of radicals, right? I mean, it was like the New York AG case, right? We got fined almost $500 million for paying back a bank on time with interest. The bank, who's the alleged victim, is on the stand being like, no, we love Trump. We want to do more business with Trump, not less. Having their portfolio was a feather in our cap that we used to generate other business. Doesn't matter. You're a victim. It's pure and simple political.
That's insanity, man. That is insanity. When they went after Mar-a-Lago and, him basically supersizing his wealth and, showing that he was worth more than, or the properties were worth more than they actually were, which is ridiculous beyond any belief because they had no proof. They had nobody that got hurt by it. The banks themselves came forward and said, we actually gained a lot of popularity because of it, because we actually used this as an example to sell ourselves. And we made a lot of money in the process while doing it. Nobody got hurt. Nothing happened. There is no case here. And yet you want to go after this guy and make him tie up all his money, all his resources, and tie him up in court so that he's not out there, you know, doing his rallies, gathering support, gathering whatever he needs to so that he can stand up in the election. And yet and still, every step of the way, Donald Trump has come through. Every step of the way. No matter what you've thrown at him so far, he has stood up, gotten right back up, and, you know, gone in like full bore. So,
wow.
Come on, man. This has got to stop. This has got to stop.
Persecution. They're going after. There's nothing that they won't do to stop Trump, and they understand now, with years of experience in the White House. I think, you know, going in as a novice was great in many ways, but you also don't know who the snakes are. You don't know who the people who are going to actually help you and be sort of loyal to the cause, and that cause is, you know, being the duly elected president of the United States, doing the things you said you would do, versus doing what the swamp wants, slow rolling what the president wants. You know, all those unelected officials, and so I think the notion of Trump coming back now actually scares them so much more because he has that knowledge, he has that understanding, and I think that will make him so much more effective in a second term.
Well, and also, if you're going to kill the king, you better kill the king.
Yeah, you best not miss, as the saying goes.
That's
right?
exactly right. So, are you worried? Well, a couple questions. Will this stop the campaign? Like, what effect is this going to have?
Listen, I spoke to my father, you know, right after the verdict, you know, today. I mean, you know, obviously, it's a somber moment. I mean, you know, you know me well enough. I can pretty much, you know, fight through anything, and we keep going, and he will too. But, you know, it is a somber moment, more so for our country. So, but if anything, I would say it's actually strengthened his resolve. I think in 2016, it was the elevator ride right before the infamous escalator ride. You know, now we find out who our real friends are. You know, he knew what was going to happen. He knew the celebrities would go, but he knew that, and he did it anyway. I think after 2020, he understood that if he just went home, he could go play golf and go back to building buildings and making millions and getting paid to give speeches and stuff like that. There's just too much at stake. And so he's just unwilling to stop.
I got to think a lot of people are looking back to 4 years ago and reaching the conclusion, well, if they'll rig a trial, they'll probably rig an election.
I think without question. I think, you know, the reality is, you know, what I see, you know, on the ground, the amount of people from the demographics that probably have never voted Republican before, that are just, you know, grabbing me at airports, or like even walking down the streets, you know, in New York the other day. It's amazing. I mean, I did for example, you know, I was one of the probably most out there people in terms of rallies and campaigns, doing my own thing in 16 and 20. I think, just for example, October of 2020, I think I did 104 rallies in that month. So like 4 a day for a month straight. Like I'm on the ground. You know, the energy in 2020 was better than even 16, amazingly enough, but they had that ability to weaponize COVID and all of that stuff. We saw the nonsense. It's so much stronger right now, and we're still 6 months out. That doesn't mean they won't do, you know, again, I don't even pretend to think that, hey, it's going to be fair and they're not going to cheat. And they're not, I used to probably think that, hey, there's only so far they can go. Like how, you know, they're going to roll this guy over the line in a gurney and, you know, pretend he's, because I used to think they actually had maybe a little bit of shame, but that's not actually at all true. I don't think they care anymore. They're laughing at, you know, when they use democracy, it's a soundbite.
But they're never
laugh
punished.
About at their cocktail
They're never
parties.
punished. They weren't punished for the Iraq War,
Correct.
or the Afghanistan withdrawal, or the lies around COVID, the vaccine mandates. They weren't punished for the 2020 election.
Russia. I mean,
Russia.
Not only are they not punished, Tucker, they're given better jobs. They either keep their job and then they get a CNN contributorship to talk about preserving democracy.
But maybe, I mean, if you treated your kids this way, they'd be sociopaths.
I think they are.
Yeah, well, they certainly are.
They are.
I'm sure they had boomer parents who indulged them, of course. But I mean, someone needs to be punished at some point, right? So it stops.
I think without question. I don't think, you know, we have not done that well, Republicans, right? The Democrats don't fear us because they know, well, we'd never play the same game, because we actually believe what they think is a, you know, a soundbite. We actually believe those things. And it's actually hard. It's hard for me to say those things because I'd love not to have to play that game, but I don't believe there's another answer other than like we have to fight fire with fire. As long as we're playing T-ball while they're playing fast pitch hardball, they're going to win. They're going to take their power. They're going to run to the bank. They're going to and laugh every step of the way. There's just not enough actual fighters there. I mean, when you look at, even honestly, look at the Republican bench. It's not very deep.
No.
You know, in terms of the guys that you'd actually, hey, who's a guy I want in a foxhole? Who's a guy that'll actually fight? Who's a guy that's not going to succumb to the pressures of Washington, D.C.?
Who are they?
I mean, like right now, I mean, I love a guy like a JD Vance. You know,
I do too.
there are a couple, but man, that list is who's next.
Mike Lee is kind of becoming that guy.
Yeah, Mike Lee's a fighter. I like Mike, and and it's interesting. It's one of those. In 2016, Mike Lee and I almost got in a fist fight on the convention floor. Like, we were very different, but like he's a guy that I text with probably daily.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that once you actually have that relationship, you can actually people come around. It's like, okay, you were actually right.
Well, people change on the basis of evidence and what they
Correct.
see. My views are totally different from what they were 10 years ago.
I think the problem with DC is for conservatives. It's actually an easy existence. You can be a Republican in DC as long as you're Republican light.
Of course.
If you're like, hey, say whatever you want when you're speaking to a group of 10 people in your little hometown. You come to DC, you can vote with the Republicans like 80% of the time.
Yeah.
When it actually matters, as long as you vote with us, the Washington Post isn't going to come after you. They're not going to be protesting in front of your home. It's an easy existence. You'll get invited to the cool person Christmas party and holiday party. I don't want to, they don't celebrate Christmas because they don't believe in God, right? The Democrats, their gods are evolving, right? It goes, Greta Thunberg is the high priestess of climate change. Fauci is the Lord of
science.
Science and COVID. And these days it's Vladimir Zelensky, the high priest of Ukraine, which is apparently the #1 issue for Republicans across the country. But I've not yet seen that anywhere. It's but those are the people they choose to be their deities. And
how much money do you think that the U.S. has given to Ukraine so far?
In the 100, I don't know. I want to say 100 billion.
Yeah, it's a good number. 175 billion.
Wow.
175 billion. How much money do you think that the European nation has given to Ukraine? 89.6 billion euros so far, and committed to another 82 billion.
Wow.
That's 172 billion. It's all about the money.
Until they burn out, flame out, or get exposed for what they really are.
How can you run a presidential campaign when you're fighting multiple legal battles, criminal?
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's by design, right? I mean,
of course.
You look at all of these things. They understand. Listen, Joe Biden in a basement is good for Joe Biden's campaign because if you put him on a stage, it's a negative, right? He's incapable of getting through a teleprompter. He would get lost at this table.
Yeah.
I don't say that as like glibly. It's just it's sad. I feel bad. He can't get through basic things, and yet he's the leader of the free world, or whoever's pulling the marionette strings. Trump locked in a courtroom for 5 weeks while he should be campaigning. That's really good for them because he can bring that message to people. People understand what he's saying. It resonates with them. He's able to bring people over who would not have otherwise been able to or would have ever voted Republican. He's one of the few guys that can do that, sort of expose the left for what it is, expose what we're talking about, break through the noise put out there by the mainstream media, break through the noise and sort of the manipulation of big tech. Those are $1 trillion industries that are functioning as the marketing department for today's Democrat Party. And to be able to single-handedly sort of break some of those walls down, if I felt like if I was in charge of that, if I was in charge of the Democrat side, we'd be winning elections 99.9 to 0.01,
exactly.
And yet they're still close. I think our messaging is there, and I think it's really important. Perhaps, honestly, the stuff that they've done to my father, our family, perhaps it's the most important thing to happen to America in recent history, in that it's exposed just how bad it is.
I think you
can't hide from it anymore. It's not like, I get it. Like, you come home from a long day of work, you're trying to feed your family, you're listening to 5 minutes of Brian Stelter on TV. It's like, well, there's got to be something to it. During the early campaign stuff, if I watch TV to hear about myself, I'm like, man, I hate me too.
We just spoke about that.
People feel it every day. They're not going for it anymore, and I think it's why they're watching you here or me on Rumble or whatever it may be. They're going to other places to hear an alternate viewpoint because the machine just isn't delivering anymore, and it's so unreal.
But the machine knows that, and the machine exists to perpetuate itself. That's the only point, is to maintain power. Mm-hmm. These are incompetent people with no other prospects in life other than running the machine. So,
not all of them are incompetent. You know,
Well,
when I see what
they're
tech is
good at
doing,
machine running. Yeah.
when I see what tech is doing, though, you even see it now because I see, just the algorithm. It's like it'll show me just enough of what I want to see, but never promote anything else.
Right.
And my Meta platforms. I haven't grown in 3 years, and yet everyone that comes up to me, hey, you got the greatest Instagram I've ever seen. So the people who are already following me will see my stuff, so it appears. It's almost like it's AI designed to let you think you're not being censored, or that you're able to see the stuff that you want.
Oh, I'm aware.
But they're preventing that growth. You're well aware of that. So
yes.
the evolution of that is making it harder. In 16, 17, 18, when I was starting to get censored by, let's call it Twitter 1.0, they're like, well, how do you know you're being censored? I was like, well, because yesterday I got 7,500 retweets on a post. Today I got 3. And it's, like I do my own social. When I hit that button, I know what it's going to do. I know when it's, okay, that's a decent post. I know that's hot. That's going to go big. And it's like when it goes big for about 30 seconds and then it's like, just, you see exactly what they're doing, but they're coming up with better ways to make it appear as though they're not censoring, while still, continuing to perpetuate and push, the ideals that they espouse and value.
No one interfered in the last election more than Mark Zuckerberg.
Or Google.
Or Sergey Brin. That's exactly right. So, but let me ask you, the convictions come down 34 yesterday, and your father goes out there and just basically raises the middle finger and says, we're going to win anyway. And within hours, Benny Thompson of Mississippi, who's a monster, Democratic congressman, says, introduces legislation to pull a Secret Service. Yeah. So basically they're saying, okay, we'll kill you now.
Well, they did that a while ago also. If he goes to prison, we want to pull his Secret Service. So basically, if we put him in a cell, we're going to put him in a place where he could be murdered.
But that's a death threat.
Of course it is. But
from a member of Congress.
Again, should it surprise us? I mean, you look at half the congressmen, get in their faces, make them feel it. I mean, they can say these things and they are lauded as heroes. If we said something even remotely like that, we're literally inciting violence. I mean, those words are violence, Tucker. We've seen this. The double standard that's out there. I mean,
but how hard is it for you?
Congresswoman after Congresswoman, you have a Hamas caucus, in Congress calling for, the death of people in the Middle East. It's, well, that's okay. You can't do that. If we did something similar, we'd be blocked. We'd be off of every platform. We'd be canceled. And, again, different games. We're playing 2 very, very different games.
But that's so threatening. Tony Fauci he doesn't even work for the government. He's got Secret Service protection. He walks in the dog park in Washington, D.C. I happen to know for a fact because it's my dog park.
Wow.
Former dog park. And he's got, 3 guys following him, but they want to pull it from your dad.
Yeah. Well, look at what they did with some of the justices, the Supreme Court justices, right? I mean, you think that they'd be able to do what they've done to even, Alito, even this week, we're going to make him recuse himself because his wife hung a flag upside down. I was like, well, she can't express an opinion. What they've tried to do to Clarence Thomas, what they did as it relates to Gorsuch and others, it's insanity. If they did that to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, if they were picketing in front of their house like they did Amy Coney Barrett, that would be a serious problem. Those people would go to jail.
Of course.
But, we'll let if that's the conservative justice, we'll let them suffer a little bit. We'll make sure but it's effective. Because then you see some of them, and some of them are a little weaker than perhaps their principles, and they're it's a little bit. Maybe I got to go a little light on this one because it's not worth the headache. I mean,
when the Democratic Party's militia shows up outside your house, it's happened to me.
Yeah,
people are intimidated by that.
Of course, and we see it across the board. It's designed. The Hunter Biden laptop, that's Russian disinformation. Here's 52 intelligence officers signing off on it. Oh, it must be. 4 years later, oh no, it's actually his laptop. There's no accountability for that either, but. They're like, well, no, we're admitting it now. It's like, no, but you got exactly what you wanted at the time. We understand there's no accountability for it. That's election interference as much as anything else. Also, there was the stat, I think it was 17% of people said had they known about the Hunter Biden laptop, it would have changed their vote in 2020. 17%.
Damn, 17%.
Wow.
That's a lot of votes. And yet, that was the
2020 election. The difference was less than 1%. Right? Biden won by less than 1%, I believe, the 2020 election.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
17%, the 17% would have made a huge difference.
Bro, that would have been a landslide right there.
That's so.
Insanity, man.
Gospel. And if you said anything about it, we've had the conversation about, Wuhan lab leak theory. No. Of course, it didn't come from the lab that studies the virus in question that we fund. It came from the wet market 3 feet outside of the lab. And if you believe otherwise, we're going to pull your funding. If you're a doctor, you'll lose tenure if you're at a university. You won't, Fauci's going to not sign off on your grants anymore. And even if you're like, but you don't have to be a scientist. They're like, Don, how would you know? You're not a virologist. It's like, you don't have to be a virologist to know that it happened there. You just have to not be an imbecile. Like, you can have like mid, double-digit IQ and be like, of course it came from the place that studies the exact virus in question that was at ground zero of where it released, and not from 4 feet outside of that. Like, it's insane. And yet, think of the truly intelligent people in positions of power in medicine and otherwise who went along with this blindly because it was easier to do, and there was a lot of money, and it's not
kind of hard to do
things.
That now, though. I mean, everything that's happened.
This isn't all that long ago. I mean,
right. But I do think at this point, if you're still telling yourself those lies, you are lying to yourself. You are a liar.
But it doesn't matter. They correct it years later, but they got what they needed out of the ruse.
Right.
Right. They got what they needed. And again, because there's no accountability after the fact, it doesn't matter. They'll do it again. And they'll make it the gospel for 6 months, or, I always said, the difference between the truth and the conspiracy theory is 6 months.
Yeah.
Now it's like 6 minutes, but they'll still get what they want out of that 6 minutes, use it to manipulate whatever they need to. And, I don't see that stopping. I see more people being awake to it, right? That 6 months moved to 6 minutes because people are not just blindly buying the BS anymore.
So how does it play out from here over the next 5 months? I mean, they tried to put him in prison. They're still. Do you think
we got to overwhelm the margin of fraud.
So it's just to ask. It's July 11th is sentencing.
July 11th. So by the way, you think that's a coincidence? That's 4 days before the Republican National Convention. Do you think that's a coincidental timing, or do you think that's designed to throw a wrench into that? I mean, yet another coincidence, right?
Yeah.
But what happens if can they remand him and put him in jail then?
I imagine they will try, right? I mean,
why wouldn't they?
Yeah, of course. Like, does anyone think? And again,
that's too far.
That's too far. It's nothing's too far. And again, until it happens.
Tucker's laugh always gets me, man. He has such a funny laugh.
We have to stop giving them the benefit of the doubt, thinking they're going to act above board. This is an arm's length transaction. No, it's not. Like, what are you talking about? There's not a single aspect of this case that should stand in any court. But where do you appeal right now? To the New York Appellate Division, which is just as radical? And it's not just this case. You look at all the shade, all the craziness around Fannie Willis, right? That case. You look at Jack Smith and the FBI doctoring documents and setting up staging photos and then leaking it to the Washington Post. The classified documents that end up on the front page of the Washington Post. That's fine. Each one of these things wouldn't stand. If we did this to, meaning conservatives, some sort of Republican did this to Obama, it would never end. It would be a perpetual story, and rightfully so. And yet, like, hey, as long as it's against a conservative, as long as it's against Trump, who's up against that machine, we're going to allow these things to happen. It's not like one of these things doesn't have any serious hair on it, right? They're all shady as hell, and yet it doesn't matter. And our mainstream media almost refuses to cover it. They won't talk about these things. My father, in many cases, is gagged. I mean, think about that. I mean, First Amendment is kind of the First Amendment, right? It's a big one for us. The former president of the United States is not allowed to talk about the facts of the case because, if people actually heard that from him, they'd realize just how much, BS is in all of these things. That should trouble a lot of people. You think it stops?
That should trouble a lot of people. That's like beyond insanity. Right? I don't know.
That you're able to not speak about the truth or the details of the case?
The gag order that was put on him, right?
With Trump, think about that. I mean, if they can do it to arguably one of the most, out there, most powerful people in the world, a bank account to be able to fight, a base to push it, venues to be a soapbox to speak from, if they can do it to him, who can't they do it to? But more importantly, if they will so flagrantly and so corruptly do it to him, who won't they do it to? That's the question we have to be asking. I mean, is anyone safe? And it's like COVID. People going blindly along. No, it's going to be different this time. I'm like, really? Like that's what you've got out of this?
But if they put the Republican candidate who was leading in the polls, all things equal, he becomes president again in November. If they put him in jail right before the Republican convention, on fake charges stemming from a rigged trial, they're kind of pushing violence, aren't they?
Listen,
how do they expect people to respond to that? Nothing like that has ever happened.
In the reality, you have to be careful even how you talk about that.
No,
right?
they are pushing.
Well,
violence.
they are.
They want.
They clearly
violence.
are. But again, like nothing should surprise us, right? The star witness of this case is someone who lied before every branch of Congress, was disbarred, lied to banks, lied.
They are pushing it, but if you talk about it, you're guilty.
To wives, lied to the press, but we're expected to believe that he actually told the truth in this one instance, right? That's who they hang their hat on, because it doesn't matter when it's rigged the way it is.
Freaks me out.
It doesn't matter.
We're moving toward something ugly, and I don't want that.
No one does.
Wait. Did you catch that? Did you catch that?
That they're moving towards something ugly. Let's play that one more time.
No, hang on.
Who won't they do it to? That's the question we have to be asking. Is anyone safe? And it's like COVID. People going blindly along. No, it's going to be different this time. I'm like, really? Like that's what you've got out of this?
But if they put the Republican candidate who is leading in the polls, all things equal, he becomes president again in November. If they put him in jail right before the Republican convention on fake charges stemming from a rigged trial, they're kind of pushing violence, aren't they?
Listen,
how do they expect people to respond to that? Nothing like that has ever happened.
In the reality, you have to be careful even how you talk about that.
No,
right?
They are pushing.
Well,
violence.
they are. They clearly
violence.
are. But again, like nothing should surprise us, right? The star witness of this case is someone who lied before every branch of Congress, was disbarred, lied to banks, lied to wives, lied to the press, but we're expected to believe that he actually told the truth in this one instance, right? That's who they hang their hat on, because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When it's rigged the way it is,
freaks me out.
It doesn't matter.
We're moving toward something ugly, and I don't want that.
No one does. But they're not going to let it play out. Do you think they'll ever take their foot off the gas? Like, no, it's not. They've gotten away with it for years.
How should people respond, do you think?
I think, honestly, the reality is everyone has to get involved.
Yeah.
And again, it's both sides. You have to have, people, running for office. And I'm not talking about president or Congress, or run for your school boards. That's perhaps the thing that's most important to me. Frankly, there's a component of me that I don't want to win the presidency if we don't have Congress and the Senate, because I'll probably be up on charges again, and we'll get to go through impeachment, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, for the next 4 years. I don't think that's a great place to be, but I think, apathy has caused us a lot of problems, especially on the conservative side. Hey, we run businesses and we do these sorts of things, and we want to spend time with our families, and all noble things and important, but we have to take the initiative to get involved at every level of these things, because the left has taken over every major institution in our country that controls. What they've done in education, manipulating our children, what they've done in entertainment, oftentimes the same thing. It can't stand if we actually want to have a future. Our kids, they graduate. There's high schools with higher districts. No one can read or do math, but they know the 4,376 genders. And I imagine since this interview started, there's probably another 15 that I haven't included that. So I don't want to be labeled as whatever a gender bigot by not including them. But that's the last I've been able to keep track of. We just live in perilous times.
We do.
It does seem kind of heartening. I think he raised more money in the hours after the verdict than anyone's ever raised. How much he raised?
It's over, I think, $38 million that, in the first couple hours.
Amazing.
Small dollar donors.
Wow.
And then there was a bunch of big dollar donor stuff. That's what's interesting. There are tech VC guys, respected guys, that, Hillary donors and even probably Biden donors that are like, okay, I've seen enough. Stroking, 6 and 7 figure checks now, because I think people who are watching closely enough truly understand just how far we have fallen, just how close we are perhaps to that fulcrum point where there's a point of no return, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think if we ever let it get there, there's no question in my mind that the Democrat elite, they'd maintain and seize that power, and it'll happen like all sort of communist nations, and that's where we're at. And I think people see that, and people who may not even agree with Trump on everything. And you don't have to agree with Trump on anything. I obviously agree with him on everything, Tucker, as the dutiful son. But
it's reached a level of principle, though.
Yeah, but it's like, again, name a metric where we're better off under Joe Biden. We're on the brink of World War III with the world's largest nuclear superpower by volume of nuclear capable ballistic missiles. Like, I don't know. We're going to keep funding that. We're okaying a guy that was a former like weirdo actor to send the U.S. made missiles into Russia, provoking that, I guess. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's the next distraction, right? COVID was the distraction for 2020 to allow them to manipulate things. Maybe World War III is the distraction.
That was the best line ever. Just a weirdo actor.
But it's crazy what he's talking about right here, just about distraction, right?
Yep,
I mean, and also what's scary is people that want to take Trump out. What level are they willing to go to?
Yeah,
like what degree of I don't know, like what are they capable of? And these smoke screens that are in place, and the fact that so much information is hitting from general public, and that's a very scary thought.
And that's exactly what I was saying at the beginning of this podcast. I don't think people really realize what at what perilous times we find ourselves in, and we are literally at that brink, where if these things continue and if they get away with it, man, we are headed towards doom. We are headed towards almost like a totalitarian sort of situation where everything is controlled, where you speak out of line and it's like communist China. You 100%. Get put behind bars. You know what I mean? You can't speak against the government. They control everything.
It's crazy. And we've seen that in movies, right? I mean, it used to be we used to see some movies back in the day, this person was walking around or skiing down a hill with a cellular phone talking to a buddy. And now, I mean, look what we can do with it, right? And then you've seen some movies where all hell breaks loose and there's war and everything, civilization, a big number of it gets destroyed. And then in the end, a government type regime comes in and controls everything.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So these guys that are trying to control it, the scary thing is, will they allow something like that to take place in order to take control? Because they're going to be in their bunkers. I don't know if you have been, looking around. A lot of these billionaires, including Mark Zuckerberg, they're investing heavily in these bunker-style properties.
Multiple bunkers,
multiple, right? And he's not the only one. There's so many that we don't know about. So, question is, what if they know that we don't know, right?
Well, I mean, we saw the writing on the wall. Right? If you guys have not seen the movie Leave the World Behind, I highly suggest you go watch that movie because I think that there are a lot of hidden messages within the movie. The movie was created by the Obamas. And, that right there should tell you, just about enough as to what, why you need to watch this movie. And the other movie that recently came out is Civil War. I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look. I haven't seen it.
I haven't either.
Yeah, I've heard some things about it. I've heard that it is basically depicting Donald Trump as this evil leader who ends up getting killed at the end, and the guy who kills him becomes the hero. So, the question that comes to mind when you hear something like that, when you see something like this, is look at the amount of population there is in the country. Out of those 350, 360 million people, or probably 370 million people at this point, you don't think that one or two people would use that as the inspiration needed to go on this, ridiculous mission, whatever it is, and they're gonna take that to heart and be like, we got to become that hero. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not just, these things are not a coincidence. These things aren't just happening randomly or out of luck. These are strategically being put in place so that you get reactions. You get people to react to these things, right? They're programming your brains. They're programming you so that they can activate you and use you whenever they need to.
Pushing violence.
Exactly. Crazy.
Crazy, man. Definitely, man. It's scary. It's definitely scary times, man. Interesting, yeah, for sure, but definitely more scary than interesting.
Yeah.
Because the way things are coming about, I mean, only time will tell what's going to happen.
Absolutely. All right, let's finish this. I think 3 minutes left.
For this election
Some
cycle,
of us called this a year ago.
Yeah,
the senile man can't win. They're going to bring us to war. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't say that lightly, but I also don't say it like,
well,
I don't know. Like, would I be at all surprised? Not even. I think it's lunacy. I think it's crazy, but do I think they would do it? 100%.
Wow.
100%.
Do you think, last question, but it's just, and I might be skipping ahead, but I don't think we're far from, we're at war with Russia.
Oh, of course.
If we're targeting
that whistleblower talking about the boots on the ground, I mean, I've never seen a whistleblower disappear that fast in my life.
Yeah.
I wonder why. Huh? It's almost like it's happening.
But they would need, the military is in very tough shape and recruitment is way down. No one wants to join the training military, understandably. Now they're talking about, well, who would, right?
Well, why would who's going to, the guys you'd want fighting a war for you, good, patriotic, red-blooded Americans, they don't want to go report to Trans Admiral, not because if the Trans Admiral was Patton, maybe they'd do it.
Yeah.
The Trans Admiral ain't Patton.
No.
Okay. The Trans Admiral is only an admiral because they're trans, not because they're competent or capable, and it doesn't matter.
It's grotesque.
But a big part of signing up for that and possibly dying for your country is actually believing in the things that you're fighting for. That's the basics of patriotism.
Yeah.
That's exactly
and if you don't believe in those things and you understand that you're going to be vilified, you're going to be forced to not learn how to shoot, but do diversity training. Why on earth would you do that? I wouldn't.
And that's the problem they're facing. And so, the one solution was take illegal aliens and put them in the military, so we could have
or flood our borders and put them in the voting roster, and that's another way to make up power because you've lost other demographics that were reliable voters.
But they're also talking about the draft. You're hearing that all of a sudden. Well, maybe we need a draft.
Yeah, so we can be in never-ending wars. Again.
Wow.
No one's articulated to me, and I kind of do this now, feels like, for a living. Like, no one's articulated, what does victory in Ukraine look like? I don't know what it means. Like,
I don't know.
Is it just like perpetual
What a
death
great question.
Ukraine?
What a great question. What a fantastic question. What does victory in Ukraine look like? What the hell is the end goal? Have you thought about that? Like,
I didn't really think about it like in depth, but off the top of my head, I feel like anyone who's investing in the war right now will give them a second round of reaping the benefits of it, where reconstruction of Ukraine. So either way, like if they win, hey, now you're gonna have to collect funds to rebuild Ukraine and help it get out of all this devastation that has just gone through.
Well, there were reports that came out, I think maybe like 6-8 months ago, that BlackRock was heavily investing in Ukraine and trying to, and as a matter of fact, putting forth plans of reconstruction and rebuilding.
Wow.
And it just so happens that BlackRock, one of the biggest institutions in the world,
Unions and Russians until they're all wiped out, and BlackRock comes in there and takes over all the farmland. I mean, is that what it is?
It's like I know these things, man. It's like I know these things, bro.
Wow.
That's so crazy.
Wow.
Oh, man.
There you go, man.
That's crazy. All right.
Because feels like that's what it is to me.
They're already selling off land in Ukraine to foreign investors, and they will flood Ukraine with third world immigrants, and Ukraine will not exist in 50 years. There'll be no Ukrainian nation. And we betrayed them like no other country ever. But I just ask you, would people actually serve in a draft?
I'd have a hard time. I mean, honestly,
hell no.
The metric I use for this is not just the recruitment numbers, but the amount of guys that I know, I shoot a lot and whatever, the circles are tight, that are like fourth generation Army. They're like, I would beat the crap out of my son if he decided to, these are guys that, their entire ethos is around that military background. They are great friends. And They're like,
I know.
they wouldn't even think about it. They disown their children if they joined this military today. And that's sad.
It's the worst.
Now that's saying something.
That is saying something, man.
Wow.
That is absolutely saying something. So there you have it, guys. I mean, I hope you got something out of this video, and I hope, it incited some sort of thought within your brains as to what we are facing and what we are going to face in the coming months, especially right before election. Please keep your eyes open. Please keep your mind open. And don't just believe everything that you hear on the TV or radio or whatever you may have. Do your own due diligence and look into things a little bit further. Look into why these things are happening, and why these people want to go after and prosecute Donald Trump, because Donald Trump stops their money flow. Donald Trump prevents wars from happening. And guess what wars do? Just like we spoke about in one of the previous episodes, they generate a lot of revenue, basically lining these people's pockets, right? And in order for them to maintain control and power, they need money. So you got to keep that cycle flowing at all times. The more wars there are, the more wars you incite, the more your defense contractors are going to continue producing weapons and artillery. The more money is going to get printed, the more money is going to go into the senators' pockets that are pushing these agendas and these bills. It's all a money trap at the end of the day. So,
it's a big wheel.
It's a big wheel, and not just a money trap. It's all about control as well. Right? Because once you have all the money in the world, what comes next is control. And that's something that we should really be afraid of, because live free or die. Like I'm all 100%. About living free, man. So we ain't trying to go back to nothing.
No, I hear you, man, 100%. And I mean, who wants all these restrictions and controls, right?
Yeah,
it's human nature. We have earned the right, and we are privileged to be in countries where we're able to feel free to whatever number of degrees. And through all this information, when we come to find out that our actions are being, I guess, restricted, and we don't have the power to do what we think we do. It's quite upsetting, and that's why information is power. Independent news outlets like this one, and there's so many others out there, right? That you can fact check and verify. Just get that information under your belt, because that's gonna give you the edge versus the rest of the people out there. When the lion is chasing you, you don't have to be the fastest. You don't have to be the fastest one. You just have to be faster than the slowest one. So it all comes down to protecting yourself, your family. I'm just saying, I don't want to be the last one, back there if the lion's chasing me. You best believe it, baby. I'm okay being the second last. I might not be the first one, but as long as I'm not eating, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about.
But just be in the know, just, you know what I mean? Understand what's happening around you, understand how it affects you, and don't be naive and think that, these people that are in politics, these people that are in the, positions of power, they're actually looking out for your benefit, because they're not. And the sooner that you wake up to that, the sooner that you realize what's happening around you, the better it might be for you in the long run. So we'll leave you guys with that. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Please leave it in the comments below, especially if you like the reaction videos. Definitely like, subscribe, post in the comments what you guys thought about everything that we spoke about, what you guys think of this control, what do you guys think of living free, and let's incite some good conversations in the comments. Until next time, it's your boy Raheem and our favorite guest on this podcast, Fiery Patriot. Hopefully we'll have him back on a few more episodes, man. Just make sure you guys throw it in the comments. Bring him back. Bring FP back. and bring ZP back and bring Amir back. Bring them all back. But we'll catch you on the next one, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure. Signing off. It's your boy Raheem. Peace.
Peace.